When I speak to accountants and bookkeepers, often they say, I'm not actually that interested in working with manufacturing companies because it seems slightly daunting. But at the end of the day, it is pretty straightforward. And man, can bookkeepers add a lot of value to a manufacturing business because of the inherent challenges with managing inventory and how that actually affects the balance sheet.
You're listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Louie Prosperi. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast, Spotlight edition. I am very happy to have Shawn Coultice from Katana on with us today. We are going to focus on a unique topic that I think for a lot of bookkeepers could be very profitable. And if you are interested in getting into this would be a great launching point for you. We're going to focus on manufacturing today and how software, as well as the software used for manufacturing control and the accounting software integrates together. So, Shawn, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louie. Happy to be here and really excited to talk through this topic around bookkeeping and manufacturing. I think there's a huge opportunity for bookkeepers to add a lot of value to manufacturing businesses. So, how I got to where I am today. So I actually started at a manufacturing company myself. So I had graduated university out of Guelph, Ontario, and I had a human kinetics degree and was kind of looking for a job and ended up working for a manufacturer. Started out on the shop floor and kind of made my way up to managing our large accounts and inevitably got to implementing our ERP system.
Fantastic.
And so, yeah, I was there for a few years and then ended up working for the ERP company that I had implemented the solution for. So I ended up working for the ERP company and was there for a few years and really sort of understanding how to implement ERP. And that was really my role at that company, implementing new ERP solutions. And often I'd be working with, because in this case, we'd be changing out their financial solution. So
Right.
be working with the accountant and sort of making sure everything balanced out and the numbers were accurate. And so then worked for a couple other ERP companies and now at Katana as head of channel partnerships here. And so I work with a lot of accountants and bookkeepers and accounting firms as they sort of partnered up with us as we work really well with QuickBooks Online and Xero. And we integrate well with those solutions.
Fantastic. First of all, human kinetics. What does that mean before I go? Because I didn't want to interrupt your background, but what's human kinetics, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I guess it would be the physics of the human body. So essentially, I wanted to get into sports medicine. It was my goal, and I was kind of excited about that. But sort of the career path ended up changing and got into manufacturing software from there.
Well, you know what? The thing about school is that you start off one place and you end up completely in a different area, but it always is useful. I think human kinetics is probably definitely helped you out in the manufacturing industry for sure, right? There was a direct tie-in.
It really,
right?
it's so funny. It really does, because there's two main things. One is processes. So thinking of like processes of the human body and understanding those, they can be quite complex. Well, that can be the same case for manufacturers. And then also just understanding sort of Excel and documentation and working with, big Excel and data that really is applicable from the physics component. And so both really lend themselves well to working in manufacturing software.
No, it's true. Like, it's funny how the sciences, sometimes people go, well, how did he go from a science or a doctor degree or anything like that into business and so forth. And the reality is there is a lot of common stuff that you can utilize in other areas. So good for you. So let's talk a little bit about the big scary thing about manufacturing for bookkeepers. One of the things about manufacturing is a very complex process, right? Because you start with raw materials and then you build something and then you warehouse it and you sell it. Am I basically saying, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when I speak to accountants and bookkeepers, often they say, if I see manufacturing, I tend to maybe even look the other way. Like I'm not actually that interested in working with manufacturing companies because it seems slightly daunting. But at
Right.
the end of the day, it is pretty straightforward. And man, can bookkeepers add a lot of value to a manufacturing business because of what you described, the inherent challenges with managing inventory and how
Right.
that actually affects the balance sheet. So because there's this complexity between having these raw materials and converting those raw materials into a finished good, along with adding sort of value to that, so there's like labor component to it, and having all those costs then roll to the financials, that can be challenging for businesses to manage. But
Right.
bookkeepers have an opportunity to really make this process much more seamless and just make the business owner much more informed about their business and understand actually from a financial perspective the true costs and how much value they are holding in inventory.
So that's interesting because when we talk about the process, the manufacturing, and who touches the financial data, right, which is through the inventory, you have the production people putting information in, you have the clerks, the inventory manager, and so forth. All of these people are in there. So where does the bookkeeper come in with regards to their skill set? Do they do a reconciliation part? Where's their value added? Because they're not going to do from A to Z. They're coming in at a certain point. Could you sort of highlight of where they would best fit?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it falls along that inventory piece where, for the most part, manufacturers' inventory is actually
Right.
inaccurate. They don't know how much they have in stock. And so they're using sort of visual cues to let themselves know that they need to go and purchase material, and they're having stockouts or they're buying too much. But at the end of the day, they just don't know how much they have in stock. And so they're either doing quite a bit of physical inventory counts, and then they
Right.
have this value, and journal entries are now required in order to have their balance sheet be accurate. And
Okay.
so that's often where the bookkeeper is coming into play is the company's doing a lot of these physical counts, and maybe they're doing cycle counts, and then they're having to do journal entries on a weekly basis to kind of update the inventory and try and keep it as accurate as possible. And this is all due to the fact that the operational system isn't connected into the financial system. And so because of this, you have this inaccuracy of data, and then it's relied upon the bookkeeper to kind of balance those two out and try and get the information in the financial system accurate.
That's interesting because you indicated that the connection has a lot of adjusting entries, and Shawn, as we both know, adjusting entries don't really give you the full picture. It's just a number, and then you'd have to probably go back to an Excel spreadsheet or something to figure out what the details were, right? Because it's comprised. What's really interesting about Katana is when I took a look at it. First of all, it's cloud based, which is fabulous. I love everything cloud, to be honest with you. I think that's where we should all live. But what I noticed about it is that it has a whole manufacturing process, and then it literally links into key software. And the two main ones that we're aware of is Intuit, of course, QBO. I think the other one that you're very well connected with is Zero. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I like how you described the cloud aspect and how we've just forged a really tight relationship and partnership with Intuit. And how we're sort of describing that partnership in a tagline is Katana plus QBO equals cloud manufacturing.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
one of the challenges that Intuit and their customer base has in transitioning their clients over to the cloud, which is better because then, they're on up-to-date software, they have backups, their data is secure, all these benefits of being in the cloud aren't really accessible for a lot of manufacturers that are using QuickBooks. Why? Because QuickBooks Online doesn't have inherent functionality that is required for manufacturers. You can't do sales orders. It doesn't have multi-currency. You can't do unit of measure conversions. So all these challenges prevent manufacturers from moving from QuickBooks Desktop over to QuickBooks Online. But if you add Katana into that tech stack, it allows the client to move to the cloud where they can actually have both QuickBooks Online and Katana operating. So you have your operations system in Katana, and then you have your financial system, QuickBooks Online. And we integrate, as you're kind of speaking to, right at that balance sheet level. And you can see every single journal entry that's made based on every invoice and bill that is created through a sales order or purchase order out of Katana over into QuickBooks Online.
So you literally have the drill down component that if they weren't connected, that wouldn't be available to you from the accounting software all the way to the manufacturing tech stack. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. And how I've actually heard, a lot of accountants and bookkeepers describe it is it's sort of when it goes out onto the shop floor, it's just a black hole. We don't really know what happened out there. We can see sort of the number from a financial perspective, but by having the two connected, because you're referencing on the invoice, you can see the journal entry, and on the invoice number, you're referencing the sales order number that occurred in Katana. And then you have the ability to drill in specifically into what raw material, what employee, how many labor hours, all the contextual data that you need in order to make, more informed business decisions and really understand what happened on an individual sales order or job, all the way drilling into it from that journal entry that was made at the invoice level.
So let's focus on that a little bit more, because that would, what you just said was very exciting, because the daunting aspect of trying to reconcile inventory or to do analysis on inventory, and we're not just talking about inventory, we're also talking about work in process, raw materials, and all of that stuff in a manufacturing. For an accounting package, the ability to have that integrated from the source, like right away, allows the bookkeeper and accountant to be, quite honest, much more comfortable in reconciling and making, if there's anomalies, they will be a lot easier to pick them up. Is that correct? Because technically, what we talked about earlier on when we first started was the bookkeeper and the accountant's primary function would be, particularly the bookkeeper, would be to make sure that the information is reliable and accurate, and the ability to drill down right to the source allows them to do that more effectively. Did I read that wrong, or is that correct?
It's totally correct. Absolutely. And the nice thing about that is you're going to be able to see all the transactions that are happening within the financial solution. So QuickBooks Online, which is the control. So only the bookkeeper, maybe the accountant have access to that. Whereas you have, the other individuals that are, accessing within the company, the operational system within Katana. And so they have the ability to go into Katana now and see, okay, I want to look at all my operational costs for this month. How does that cost been rolled up into, QuickBooks Online? So they have the ability to really drill into the data on both the financial end or the operational end, but they have that control factor because they're the only ones that are able to access really that QuickBooks Online account.
And I think that's the key factor. Now, we talked a little bit about inventory counts, and how does Katana minimize or eliminate or reduce that component, and how does that help the bookkeeper with regards to the reliability of the data?
Yeah, for sure. So when you think of a manufacturing finished good, so you've typically got two components that are rolling up to your cost. So you have your raw material inventory. Okay, that can be one component that you're adding value to, or it can be multiple components. And then you have your operations. So you have your labor cost on the shop floor.
Yes.
So both of those, and sometimes you may have sub-assemblies as well, but those will be rolled up to create your finished good, your cost of goods sold. Okay. And so what happens related to your sales order is when you create an invoice from a sales order, Katana is reducing your inventory value within QuickBooks Online by the value of your cost of goods sold related to the finished good that was manufactured. So your costing is much more accurate as well, because we're taking that cost from an operational standpoint and your labor costs directly from the shop floor by employees logging on and logging off of those jobs, as well as the inventory that was actually allocated and consumed on that manufacturing order. And that's what's reducing your inventory value on the balance sheet.
And does that go to like when they ship and deliver? Because I guess the SKU codes? I always forget what that, when they scan.
Yeah, the
right?
SKU. Yes,
the
exactly. Yeah, the barcode. Yeah.
I'm assuming that's integrated into the system so that the invoice is done and the product is tied to when it ships out, so they can track all of that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So different businesses workflows might be slightly different. But
Right.
typically, businesses are creating the invoice based on when they ship out the finished product. So often the procedure is the sales order is either shipped or partially shipped.
Okay.
And then from there, you are able to then create the invoice relative to what has been shipped out. You can actually create the invoice within QBO before it's shipped out, but most companies, the workflow that they have is they'll look at all of their shipped items and go in and create the invoice within QuickBooks Online relative to those shipped components. So that would be shipped items on a sales order, and then
Cool.
creating an invoice relative to that sales order. And the reason I mentioned partial invoicing is that's pretty important thing for manufacturers. If you think of just generally speaking, a manufacturer, maybe they only have 2 of the line items available out of the 5 that the customer has ordered, and they're important and they need to get those out today. So they'll ship those 2 line items out. Within QuickBooks Online, you don't have the ability to do a partial invoice.
I see.
So that's a challenge, and why manufacturers might not transition from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. But by adding Katana into that tech stack, you actually add that capability. So you can ship out, relative to, what you have in stock, fulfill the order, as far as what you can, and then partial invoice based on what you actually have shipped out and create that invoice over in QuickBooks Online.
Oh, that's great. So what you're saying technically is the manufacturing tech or integration to into it for Katana. Basically, you're replacing the entire manufacturing or the manufacturing component of QBO and putting it into Katana, and then it's just being tracked through invoicing. Is that correct? More or less. I mean, I know I'm simplifying it, but that's the basic thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Katana's managing the manufacturing and sort of
right. Okay.
components, the sales order component as well. And then QuickBooks Online is really just managing sort of the invoice, the bill, and then all the financial reporting.
Cool. That's great. So what I'd like to know more about is, Shawn, how does, with your experience now, because it says here, channel of partnerships, and you've indicated that you've worked with maybe at least 2 or 3 accountants and bookkeepers in the last little while, at least 2 or 3.
We have over 100 bookkeepers and accountants that are partners with Katana.
Yeah, so I know. I was just trying to be funny.
Oh.
I'm not very good at it.
No.
I'm just not good at it.
That was me.
So could you explain to me what your experiences have been with the bookkeepers and the accountants when they, like, did they have their wow moments when they started using the project? Because to me, when you integrate these 2 products, I think from a tracking and customer service and the ability to operate in a manufacturing world becomes much better, even for the people that are used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess what I typically hear is an accountant or a bookkeeper, refers to their manufacturing client as running on this old, antiquated on-premise software. So they're on
Right.
this desktop software, and they don't really have a solution for them other than moving to a full ERP system, which is a big business risk. It's a huge cost, and that's not really an option either. And so they're kind of stuck, right, to using this old software in QuickBooks Desktop that isn't continuing to improve. And they can't move them to QuickBooks Online because there isn't a solution. And so when they see this, often the response is, "Where has this been?" like this seems like so obvious because there isn't really a great solution in the market for a cloud-based technology to integrate with QuickBooks Online for manufacturers. So bookkeepers look at it in a couple of ways. So one is, wow, this is great. I now have a solution that I can go to my client with and get them up and running very quickly as well. So they're usually quite surprised in the fact that, wow, I can get up and running on Katana in about 2 weeks or a month and have that plugged directly into the QuickBooks Online and really add a lot of value to my client's business. And that's what the bookkeepers that I speak with are really looking to do. How do I differentiate my business? How do I add more value to my client? And really, that's where they're finding and trying to do with Katana is that they find a solution for their customer that goes beyond just the financial aspect of that business. They're now able to affect the operational level of that business by increasing customer satisfaction, by increasing on-time delivery, reducing inventory carrying costs by having a leaner inventory because they have now better visibility into inventory for the owners. So they're adding just so much more value to the client and really building a strong relationship with their customer base.
That is the part that really stuck in was 2 to 4 weeks to be able to get this integrated and fully running. That's impressive, by the way, to be quite honest. So that's that alone. And the other thing that you literally hit on for me, which as a former accountant / bookkeeper, was the part about being tied to the property, like where the manufacturer. So literally, it's a physical thing that you have to go to, compared to cloud-based, where now you get real-time data anytime you want, and if the owner or the decision makers are in connection with the bookkeeper, the response time for them would be a lot quicker. No, is that correct, or am I wrong on that?
You're absolutely correct. I mean, the ability now to service your client without having to actually drive out or log into their VPN or somehow get into their server where they've installed the instance of the desktop version of QuickBooks that they're using, that's gone, right? When you look at QuickBooks Online, they have a complete access point for the accountant to go in. There's even a unique view for the accountant. So the owner has one view and the accountant has a different view that they would go in and help support their client with. So it's just a much more customer-centric way of operating your client's business by being able to access it anywhere, anytime. And that's the same with building Katana into that tech stack as a born in the cloud solution.
Fantastic. I am quite impressed with the system. I think this is great with regards to how you can incorporate this into your value-added service. Is there any case studies or stories that you'd like to tell about where someone decided to convert over and the bookkeeper or the customer had a huge benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was an accountant that introduced a company called Kodama to us. So they've been a Katana customer now for over a year. And Kodama makes these really beautiful swinging chairs. And the owner is like a sort of very artistic individual. And they were running their business on QuickBooks Online. And they were really looking for an easy to use system that allowed them to manage their inventory, because that was their big challenge, but also track their operational costs, like the labor costs, and then easily integrate it into QuickBooks Online. And they were able to increase their on-time delivery by 80%.
80%. Wow.
80%. So check out Katana, mrp.com. Go to our case study page. There's, I think, maybe 30 case studies there where we speak to some of the benefits that businesses have had in, reducing their inventory, growing their business, and a lot of it revolves around the ability to quickly integrate it with their accounting solution, whether it be Xero or QuickBooks Online. And so that's, there's a lot of case studies, but the Kadama one just popped to my head because we've been talking about QuickBooks, and that was one of the main benefits that the owner found, is it was really easy to implement it with QuickBooks, and they immediately saw a huge improvement in their on-time delivery.
Fantastic. I'd like to just ask a couple questions about that cases. One is the conversion or bringing Katana on board for this company. How do you know or remember how long it took to get it integrated?
To get up and running, I don't know specifically about Kadama. I know like our on average, a customer is up and running in about a month on Katana. Every implementation can be a little bit different. I know some customers do take longer, and some customers it takes shorter than that. But Kadama, I don't remember off the top of my head. Sorry.
It's okay. I put you on the spot there. I mean, it's just, but because the curiosity is that an 80% turnaround, and the fact is amazing. Now, with regards to bringing it on board, like taking someone from either an old system like we talked about, server base, or a QBO desktop, and putting it into Katana. Do you guys do all of this as part of your package, or is that an add-on, or how does it work with the customer as well as the professional accountant or bookkeeper?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So if they already have, QuickBooks Online or Xero in place,
Right.
we have a couple different sort of approaches from a partnership perspective. Katana has onboarding services. So part of the software package is support from our team to help get the customer up and running. And usually we'll work with the accountant and the client in unison, and sort of just help the customer get up and running and make sure everything's working properly. And that's part of the software costs. Many of our partners, though, they want to sort of offer that as a service to their client. And so if they want to bill the client for kind of setting up the software and getting it implemented, that's perfectly fine. And they can actually say, our onboarding team can still actually support them, but they're the main point of contact. And the accountant would be the one that's speaking with the client. But usually to start with, the first, I would say like 5 customers that they would onboard, I would suggest sort of using our onboarding team to help get the system up and running. And then as they're more comfortable with it, they maybe have a few customers that are using the software. They can start to do those implementations on their own and sort of add that as a sort of a service that they're offering.
That's great. Well, Shawn, manufacturing processes and online accounting, I know for most people it's not exciting, but I found this very, very exciting and very interesting. I want to thank you for all of the information. I'm all about trying to automate, have real-time data, and the ability for integration, because not having integration into a software package and having companies like Katana build these very powerful tools that take care of a lot of the stuff that you couldn't put in an accounting software, right? It just becomes cumbersome, right? And making sure that it runs well, I think, is fantastic. And I do think you have made it less daunting and definitely opened up the ability for professional bookkeepers to retake a look at manufacturing companies, and definitely take a look at Katana to see how that could help them. If a bookkeeper would like to, let's say, test drive your product or talk to you about maybe existing customers or new customers, do you have a program or a process that allows them to connect with you directly?
Yeah, absolutely. So on our website, katanamrp.com, they can go there, and under the company section, there's a partner program page, and you can book a call with us directly through that. And maybe in the show notes, I can just put a meeting link, and they can book a call with me directly if they want to talk further about Katana and our partnership program. And one thing that's really, really exciting that we're releasing is with that new partnership we have with Intuit and QuickBooks Online, though there will only be one bill for the client at the end of the day. So they can actually adopt QuickBooks Online and Katana, two separate pieces of SaaS software, but just have one bill that they would have to pay out. And that's because we have this partnership with Intuit that's allowed us to offer that to the clients. And I think that just makes the life easier for those customers.
Definitely. Integrated bill where it's all included and it flows seamlessly. That's fantastic. Well, congrats on that Intuit partnership. I think that's going to be extremely well for both parties. Shawn, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up the show?
No, I just, Louie, it was really nice speaking with you. I've been really a fan of the Successful Bookkeeper Association as a whole. It's been a wealth of knowledge for me and my team, and the bookkeepers that have joined our program through Successful Bookkeeper have been awesome to work with. So, just really appreciative of the time today.
Well, we're always happy to have you on, Shawn. And if there's any other topics or products that you'd like to connect, please do so. Connect with us, and we'll definitely have you on again. It was a pleasure talking to you. Manufacturing is not my skill set area, but I really found this interesting, and I could think of a lot of different ways to make this valuable. So I hope our listeners out there do take a good look at the Katana product and readdress manufacturing. It's not as scary as everybody thinks. So that wraps up another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye and have a great day.
You've been listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with Louie Prosperi. For more information and to access the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening and have a great week.